Hello, good morning. Welcome to Dailies on Network Television, where we keep you updated with the happenings. One of your breakfast show where we look at what's happening from the Nigerian newspaper, the front pages, precisely. And then do well to drop your comment and your views on our Facebook as well as on YouTube. I am Stella Elisha Dashom. Of course, I'll be doing the program with Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Stella.
How was weekend?
It was fine. How was yours?
Great, thank you so much. All right, we shall be running through the papers and we will love to start with the Voice of Liberty newspaper.
The big story on the Voice of Liberty: insecurity. Ribadu not man for the job, coming from experts as bandits overwhelm security agencies. Stakeholders have blamed the Tinubu administration for its apparent lack of an effective security framework and coordination under Nuhu Ribadu as National Security Advisor in the wake of the rising wave of terror and banditry, especially kidnapping, in recent months. In the Federal Capital Territory, 3 killed petrol vehicle, others burned as police shade clash. In Sokoto, nutrition supplements stolen replaced with stones, UNICEF alleges. In Plateau, JNI kicks as Mutfang creates portfolio for indigenous Muslims. Still on the paper, district head 6 others kidnapped in southern Kaduna. Nigeria's democratic system getting tired, allow restructuring. Primate Ayedele urges Tinubu. 30 days lockdown threat, Simon Epa exploiting Southeast governor's weakness. Statement from Oheneze. Explain why Owando got accelerated approval in Agip ENI purchase. Atiku slams Tinubu. And that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
On the Punch newspaper, state opposed federal government 600 billion naira vote for 70,000 naira wage. You can find detail of that on page 2. And on flooding, we have Delta, Kogi create IDP camps, Anambra, Kwara, one communities. And we've spoken about that. The fact that apart from warning, what is this various states doing to protect its indigents? Detail found on page 2. The big story for the paper says September roll out Tinubu panel, Dangote refinery, brainstorm on petrol pricing, with the writer here saying President's Committee refinery to conclude talk on Naira crude supply and petrol pricing. More detail found on page 27, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Abuja Inquirer, Atiku alleges fraud in Owando's $783 million takeover of Agip and ENI. You can start with the details on the front page. Over 1.8 billion naira disbursed to 37,000 petty women traders. Disclosed details of Chinese loan syrup tells governors. ASU to party federal government Monday over union strike ultimatum. On monkeypox, NACA warns that citizens living with HIV/AIDS more at risk. Details can be found on page 14. The big story: bloody Sunday in Abuja. 2 police officers killed, 3 seriously injured. Several shades uncounted. 4 patrol vans set ablaze. Residents in uneasy calm. Hashtag end bad governance protest. Court freezes 32 bank accounts. We have a picture story showing the scenes of what happened in Abuja yesterday, and that's all the news on the Abuja Inquirer.
On Nigerian News Direct, we have Abeokuta Ota Lagos Road. Dabo Abiodun assure residents of completion in 18 months. You can find that on page 21. April's fiscal report reveals widening deficit, plummeting customer credit. You can find that on page 7. As well, the big story: you are adopting sham subsidy regime to fund your 2027 ambition. This is an allegation coming from the former Vice President Atiku to the federal government, urges the federal government to approve shared Renaissance mobile satellite deal. You can find that on page 21. And on power crisis, Nigerian students decry power outrage as soaring electricity bill cripple academic activities. Enugu government uncovers 2,640 ghost pensioners, clear backlog of over 7,000 pensioners. Detail found on page 23. Looking at what happened in Abuja during the weekend, 2 police officers killed, Three stabbing shite attack. You can find that on page 21. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper. You can do well to get the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Nation newspaper, Dangote Otedola Olumelu back federal government move to eliminate malaria. The big story, two policemen killed during clash with Islamic group in FCT. Three policemen critically injured, three petrol vans touched, 52 El Zakzaki's men arrested. You can start with the details on the front page. Court freezes 32 accounts of individuals, firms linked to August protests. Okonjo-Iweala canvasses economic policy consistency. VP government committed to rule of law. $115 million on a port terminal ready for inauguration. Details can be found on page 5. Set to deploy technology in eradicating unclaimed dividends. Set to deploy technology in eradicating unclaimed dividends. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On this same newspaper, federal government moves to eliminate malaria, taps Dangote Otedola Olumelu to drive the effort to end the scourge. It's unacceptable to leave eradication in the hands of donor partners, says Dangote. More detail found in the paper. Of fuel scarcity persists in Lagos and others. You can read that on page 5 of the paper. At the NBA conference, Tinubu vows to protect rule of law, tolerate designating voices. Okonjo-Iweala expresses concern about slow pace of Nigeria's development. Lagos has more women in the judiciary than any other state, says Sanwo-Olu, and we know that they are having their conference there for those who are involved in the judicial system. You can do well to read more detail of that in the paper. Police shot and Rene in bloody clash in Abuja. Some officials dead, several others injured. Detail found on page 34. We have the picture story here, the third coronation anniversary of the Olu of Warri. You can do well to grab the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Sun newspaper, in the fight to kick malaria out, federal government picks Dangote Otedola Olumelu in effort to end scourge. The big story on the paper, Catholic bishops warn of more youth protests, says country sitting on ticking time bomb. Hashtag end bad governance, court freezes 32 individuals, firms and bank accounts. We foiled your plot to destroy our aviation sector. AON hit Fairfax Africa Fund. Group predicts economic doom in Nigerian airlines. Kalu disassociates self from Abia APC spokesman outburst. Atiku slams Tinubu over subsidy scam and rights abuse. Asks federal government to explain why Owando got accelerated approval in Ajib ENI purchase. Manufacturers abandon grid electricity as federal government cries out over 5,155 megawatt unutilized power. Acton calls for new constitution. Ayoku tells Tinubu. Details can be found on page 6. Two cops killed, vehicles burned at police shite clash in Abuja. An Islamic sect claims police killed several of its members during peaceful procession. Details can be found on page 4. Enugu uncovers 2,640 ghost deceased pensioners on payroll, and a picture where we can see Olabi Salis, US-based lawyer and spiritual leader, soul makers ministry make travel history, conquers the North and South Pole. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, FX execution hitches threatening food waiver policy as farmers kick. You can read that on page 6. Syrup asks governors and Wike to disclose the details of Chinese loans. Detail found on page 5. Atiku chides Tinubu over citizens' right violation, and Okonjo-Iweala asks politicians to stop weaponizing insecurity, which you can find on page 3. Again, terrorist strike in Kaduna kidnapped district head and 6 others. Enugu uncovers 2,640 ghost pensioners begin payment of council pensions. You can find that in the paper. The unholy secrecy of National Assembly members' pay packet. This is an editorial you can read on page 15 of the Guardian newspaper. Two killed in Abuja, Shite police clash, bandits kidnap 150 in Sokoto state. Downside of the paper to nation, president reshuffle cabinet, replace 19 ministers ahead of the election. You can find that on page 2. We still have the picture story showing us the spiritual leader that covered the North and South Pole. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, End Bad Governance protest court freezes 32 bank accounts. Federal government picks Dangote Otedola Olumelu to drive efforts to end scourge on malaria. Details can be found on page 3. Two police officers killed as Shites police clash in Abuja. Ondo to host the biggest entrepreneurship festival in Africa, event to attract over 200 investors. Aiyedatiwa receives official license, assures organizers on H-free event. Tinubu should act on calls for new constitution. Ayoko is insisting. Details can be found on page 23. On terrorism, federal government resumes trial of 300 suspects. Details can be found on page 26. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
I think the issue of insecurity, Rachel, is taking our papers. I mean, especially what happened in Abuja, as well as we're seeing during the NDA conference that took place in Lagos, where we're seeing what Ngozo Conjo well I saying concerning the fact that politicians are weaponizing insecurity. And I think we've said this repeatedly on the fact that our politicians or our leaders precisely, this is what Nigerians feel, the fact that they're not doing what is expected to be done to eradicate it. It seems more like the politicians are enjoying the attention they get from international bodies and funding. And maybe that is why somebody somewhere is not doing anything to make sure that insecurity is well taken care of. Because when you look at it thoroughly, I mean, you can't help but wonder, these are things that if the whole government is willing to eradicate, they can do it. There are countries who have gone through worse stage than we have presently, but they overcame it, and then you just can't help but wonder what really is the problem. Why are we having it? We're seeing already in the first paper we took, The Voice of Liberty, where experts are coming out to say that Ribado is not the man for the job, with the fact that we're seeing that insecurity seems to be taking a different shape. And then just when you're expecting it, that, I mean, these are part of the things you said during your manifesto that you'll be able to eradicate. And you just can't help but wonder what is happening. Here we're having clash with our police officials, and you wonder why are we having that and all of that. I just felt we should to just put a spotlight on it, in the fact that any other thing we want to talk about, and then couple with the fact that here we are having Tinubu should act on the call for a new constitution. I think we've said that over and over. Is there a need for a reform in our constitution? Maybe yes, because of certain things have changed. But if you should go thoroughly, there's nothing wrong with the constitution. I've said this a number of times and I'll keep repeating it. It's just that we have people that have refused to follow it. Here we're seeing our vice president talking about the fact that they're going to do something about the rule of law. And you wonder when the law is only abiding to certain people and other people that are being exempted from it. So I'm hoping that our leaders, each time we go through the papers, we're being exposed to more things that are happening, more lapses, more potholes that needs to be, tackled. So I'm hoping that with all of this thing that's happening in the paper, we'll concentrate on doing something better to make sure that security is very, 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 very of top priority to our leaders. I hope that it's of top priority to them anyway, even though they say it is, but then Nigerians can really not feel the impact in any way.
We saw the first paper we read for today calling out Ribadu as the security advisor. What are you doing? You're incompetent. I think that was what the first paper we read this morning is trying to say, looking at some of the things that are happening concerning insecurity in the country. And there's no one thing that the government doesn't and politicize, as far as I'm concerned. The insecurity, education, health, even something as little as, palliative, the aid people get and all of that. There's nothing the government doesn't make or turn into politics, and this is what we keep crying out. And it's not everything you must make to be what will give you an advantage. There are certain things that people just deserve having access to it, and you don't have to play with it. And of course, number one is in security, because we can see that insecurity is the reason that we have internally displaced people. And then now, having internally displaced people, then we have foreign aids coming in and out. Then somebody now have the opportunity to take those funds. Or UNICEF is giving supplements and somebody somewhere is taking it out and then, giving, replacing it with stones. And at the same time, we have seen where things like salaries that are being held by workers being used as a means for campaign, assuring people that they will be paid what they have worked for, as if you're giving them, as if you're doing them something. We can sit down and count everything that the government have used for politics to their own advantage, and it shows you how we still have so much work to do regarding our growth. And because her concern, that is Iwela, her concern is not just the insecurity being politicized, but also our slow pace of growth in the country. Looking at what other developing countries are going through regarding their growth, and where we are as the giants of Africa, we are still very, very backward in regarding our growth. And then you can all point the hands back to insecurity. Why is agriculture not thriving? We can point a finger to insecurity. Why are we not having investors trooping in? There are states in this country that investors will flood it, not only because of its landmass, because of also the manpower, because of certain minerals, certain agricultural produce available, cash crops. But why are we not having investors trooping in to such areas? Because of insecurity. And we all know that to grow, wealth cannot stay in one place. There's only so much that Lagos can carry. There are other states that could carry other investors, but they cannot come because there is insecurity and we can just go about it and say it's really sad to see that the government plays with it, because there are certain things, as you clearly stated, that should not linger for so long. When they become a problem, they should be tackled right there, because it is not too big for the Nigerian government. But if it has lingered for long, and the government will keep coming out and saying they are doing their best, but we know you're not even doing 10% of what you should do. Because if only you put in some effort, we would have said goodbye to a lot of things happening in the country. But reverse is the case, they are lingering, and you can't just help but wonder when we will start having leaders that will not play politics with the lives and properties of its citizens.
Sure, we're waiting for that day. We'll just keep being hopeful.
Yeah.
We are truly waiting for that day. Well, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper, where we have court freezes 32 accounts linked to the hashtag End Bad Governance protest. Detail found on page 32. Federal government moves to eliminate malaria, picks Dangote Otitola Elumelu to drive efforts. Detailed on page 9. Catholic bishop canvass regional government, asks Tinubu to fight hunger and craft. Nigerians hope for lower cement price dims. This is the financial editorial you can find inside the paper. As well, still on the Vanguard newspaper, executive order on medicaments, where we have federal government yet to implement 2 months after. With the writer here saying federal government still working on implementation framework 2 months after coming from the minister. Delay not worth it, people are dying. As well, we have government must progressively intervene in high tariff coming from Akintayo. And then we have implementation details must be properly worked out coming from Ifeanyi. You can read that detail on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. And then we still have the picture story Olu of Warri Honors UTME FRNG bus rowing. You can see the picture over there, and you can do well grab the paper in more detail of any other story that is of interest to you from the paper.
On Leadership newspaper, tributes as Ningi Emir dies after 46 years on throne. We have a fact check: who did Dino Melaye say destroy PDP? The question: NACA warns over risks of contracting monkeypox. We can find the fact check and the trend on page 2. Dangote Otedola Elumelu to drive federal government malaria initiative. How NIADG was asked to resign. Sources, you can find details on page 4. 18 years after, 49.6 billion National Library project in a shamble. Student stakeholders seek urgent action We will complete it by 2025, the federal government is assuring Nigerians. Details can be found on page 4. Now strikes kill several terrorists in Kaduna and Zamfara. Ministry approves 200,000 naira minimum wage for shipping sector workers. IGP received rescue 20 medical students and 7 others. Catholic Bishop tax President on economic reforms. Details can be found on page 16, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at another paper, which happens to be the Metrics newspaper. Atiku questions federal government quick approval of $1,783 acquisition of Agrip. You can read that on the front page and continue on page 3. Chelsea on fire and United Wolves to get first win of season. You can read that on page 20 for sport lovers. Dictatorship allegation. Tinubu fires back. Say we will continue to promote rule of law, tolerate disseminating voice within ambit of law. You can find that on page 3. Federal government to provide 3 billion naira to 36 state FCT to cushion flooding losses, which we have seen a number of places being affected by the flood. Serap calls on 36 governors Wiki to open up on loans from China, maybe because of the number of aircraft we've been seeing being seized by the Chinese government. No wonder we're seeing Serap is calling on governors to please. They should do well and open up on the loans collected from China. You can read that on the front page and continue inside the paper. The big story here, Nigerians' economic security challenges. Okonjo-Iweala bears it all. With the writer here saying insecurity has been weaponized by politicians for political gains. Policies consistency needed to lead Nigeria to progress. Organized crude oil theft undermines economy, financial health of Nigeria. Don't use CBN as fiscal agent. Printing of naira beyond agreed ways and means limit can fuel inflation. These are all she said concerning the economic and security challenges we're facing. You can do well to read detail of that on page 2. SEC lists official website for e-dividend portal access. As well, we see resident doctors begin nationwide strike today. Detail found on page 3. This is really a sad one. I hope something will be done about that to stop the doctors. And then for those, you can read all of that on page 3. And we can see the picture story here towards a prosperous Nigeria, where we can see the Vice President Kashim Shettima in a warm handshake with the Director General of the World Trade Organization, which happens to be Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, at the opening ceremony of the 2024 Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association held in Lagos yesterday. And that's all on Metrics newspaper. But before we continue, Rachel, let's take a break at this moment just to let our viewers to air their own views as well concerning story. What do you feel about the clash that happened in Abuja, as well as what we're hearing coming from the DG of the World Trade Organization concerning the economic as well as security challenges we're facing in the country, as the country seems not to be growing as expected? We'd love to hear your own views about that. So when we come back, we will continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
The gospel of Jesus Christ is our Heavenly Father's plan for the happiness and salvation of His children. Equa Television International shares the gospel of Jesus Christ because the world must come to the realization of the power in the atonement of sin through the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. Sharing with the world the message of hope that can clean anyone from sin to enjoy the peace that is in Him. Equa Television International is live 24/7, preaching the message of salvation and truth to the world. Pray for Equa TV. Support Equa TV. Be part of Equa TV. Keep watching Equa Television International.
Hello viewers, my name is Amaka Ocheke. We anchor the program, The Living Room, right here on Equa TV International.
You are welcome to watch us every Monday.
The Living Room is a very interesting family program where we discuss everything you want to know about family.
Talk about our children's mental health.
Keep watching. Our program is always here, 5:30 every Monday. We want you to ask questions. We want you to phone in and drop topics that you want us to talk about, even on our media handle on Facebook. We're there. So keep watching, keep listening. The Living Room.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, ranging from the NBA conference that'll be happening in Lagos State, where we're seeing even the DG of the World Trade Organization, person of Okonjo-Iweala, is present there, and she is really lamenting concerning the pace at which Nigeria is growing. It's not really growing as expected, where she's talking about leaders, politicians as well, you know, weaponizing insecurity and other issues that are happening in the country. As well, we're seeing that talking about even clash between our security agency and Shaita took place in Abuja, and then where we have some casualties and then some properties as well being destroyed. So we'd love to hear your own take about it. As well, we're seeing Serap is saying that the 36 state governors as well as Wike should please open up concerning the loan being collected from China. So we'll hope to hear your own views about that. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you so much, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, we will continue the paper review looking at the New Telegraph newspaper.
The big story on the paper: stop looting our national treasury. Okonjo-Iweala tells political office holders and others. Says lack of policy consistency reason Nigeria hasn't progressed as it should. Comments federal government's effort at diversifying economy. We're living in very difficult times locally and globally. You can find all the details of our statement on page 2. We have an economic report. CBN puts value of non-oil exports at $1.63 billion. Minimum wage shipping firm set to pay workers 200,000 naira. On 2027 posters game, we have denial suspension as gladiators others test political waters ahead presidential poll. Our agenda for new CJN by lawyers. IGP hands over rescued medical students to VC. Serap wants governors Wike to disclose details of Chinese loans and liabilities repayment and others. Details can be found on page 3. Southeast National Assembly caucus laments region's exclusion from Nelfon's student loan. Hashtag end bad governance protest. Court freezes 32 individuals' Koi's bank account. 2,640 ghost deceased pensioners on payroll. This is in Enugu. Details can be found on page 2. State of the nation worsen, Catholic bishop is saying. Says Nigeria sitting on ticking time bomb, warns as long as poverty, hardship, corruption persists, there will be more youth protests. Details can be found on page 3. Shites killed 2 policemen, injured 3, FCT command. We have a study, good sleep practices promote good health. And that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
The newspaper, debt burden may impede Nigerians' drive to economic recovery. You can read detail of that in the paper. Okonjo-Iweala wants the federal government to keep public debt within sensible limit. Tinubu optimistic Nigeria will overcome its current challenges. You can read detail in the paper. Battle for 130-year-old First Bank may impact its fortunes. This is coming from investors, where we have the writer here saying boardroom squabble threatens 315 billion naira recapitalization plan. Shareholders ask parties to sword differ on CBN's rule, detail found in the paper. IGP hands over the 20 rescue medical students to their VCs, and they said no penny was being paid to get these students back. You can read detail of that on page 7. And the PDP crisis, Bodejot urges gladiators to drop personal ambitions. Serap asks minister governors to disclose details of Chinese loans and liabilities. Student loan scheme is for all, no one is excluded, presidency assures. Catholic bishops call for return to regional system of government. You can read that on page 6. More trouble for telecommunication ISPs as Starlink deepens operation in Nigeria. And you know, Rachel, I've heard people talking about that Starlink, especially talking about their network and all of that for people who always have a need to either have marketing or something to do on the internet. It's faster. I've used the Starlink. It's faster. And then, you know, people are beginning to say, in as much as it is expensive, but then people are beginning to accept Starlink and all of that. And then I think this is because most of our telecommunications are really not reliable. We can mention some networks which we know we're familiar with, and then people have trouble accessing network, especially maybe when the weather is bad or in times of crisis and all of that. So here we're seeing it's like more troubles for it. So we hope that something will be done about, especially all of these telecommunications, to do something about their network so that it will be accessible, cheap and easy, so that Nigerians can enjoy it, so that they don't go out of market eventually. So I think this is the concern on the paper. Still on Daily Independent newspaper, Shiites attack checkpoint in Abuja, killed 2 policemen and others in critical condition. You can read that inside the paper. We have a picture story here. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Tinubu pledges to promote rule of law, tolerate dissenting voices. Hashtag End Bad Governance protest court freezes 32 individuals' Cois Bank account. Tinubu should act on calls for new constitution. Business optimism hits new low in July amid rising economic concerns, a report from the Central Bank of Nigeria. The big story on the paper, Nigeria sitting on ticking time bomb. Statement from Catholic bishops says future of Nigeria dependent on how challenges bedeviling her are tackled. Details can be found on page 2. Article to federal government explain why Owando got accelerated approval on Agip ENI purchase. Slams Tinubu over subsidy scam and rights abuse. Demands release of detained whistleblower Bristol Tamunobi Ferry. You can start with the details on the front page. We're yet to receive federal government rights. Citizens in Kaduna, Kano, Katsina lament. Details can be found on page 10, and a picture showing submerged houses around Jumeta Bridge in Adamawa State as a result of downpour on Sunday. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
The rain was quite heavy yesterday,
Yes.
and then I can imagine if this houses was maybe at night time when people were sleeping. I just can't imagine. And then for people like I that don't know how to swim, what's going to happen? So it's really a very sad one. And we're talking about the issue of climate and then what needs to be done. And then we cannot overemphasize the fact that our leaders need to be on their toes concerning what we need to do about the issue of flooding and all of that, knowing which countries we share borders with, the nature of things. That I know they say we've not heard anything concerning the open of the dam in Cameroon, but regardless, there is a need for us to do something, because we have places that are close to riverine areas and all of that, and some areas are waterlogged. We've talked about human activities, the issue of mining and all of that is creating more, ways for waters and all of that. So I really sympathize with the people who got affected, and I hope that the government of that state will do something to make sure they come to their aid and make them feel comfortable while they look for a way for them to come back to their home, maybe when the rains is gone and all of that.
And I'm hoping that this is one of the places that probably heed to the warning from NEMA and NIMET concerning heavy downpour, because just as you said, if anybody was sleeping while this was taking place, we would have dead casualties and all of that. So I just hope that they were able to evacuate before it became this bad, because for Hazi to be submerged to this level, I don't think that even a swimmer will be able to swim, because you could be trapped. There are certain things that would, this is not a swimming atmosphere. Honestly. So no matter how good you are, this is a serious situation. You could be trapped, anything bad, most especially for little children, because in most cases they are likely the ones that get swept away by this water. So I just hope that these people were able to evacuate, and when they saw the rain pour at a level before it got to this, were able to flee and move. And I just hope that this is also a warning for other communities. And if you've had cases of flooding in your area, if it wasn't that bad, with the downpour now in the month of August, I think you should take it seriously. And I just hope that, most importantly, no life is lost from such. Yes.
Because, I mean, according to me, we'll still be having this rain down till September. Yes. Hopefully, maybe, who knows, October, November, because we know the rain did start on time this year and all of that. Yes. So we need to be very, very cautious. Well, let's take a look at the next paper, which happens to be the First News newspaper. Nollywood mourns as actress Sharon Opame dies after childbirth. Is really a sad one. Send our condolences to the families immediate as well as to the entire Nollywood family. Syrup 2 governors and Wike disclose full details of Chinese loan and debt agreements. You can do well to read that inside the paper. 2 police officers killed, 3 injured in Abuja shite attack. And on drug bus, we have Vietnamese board businessman excretes 68 wraps of cocaine at the Lagos airport. You can do well to read that in the paper. Grace of God brought me to power will keep me. This is coming from Fubara. I guess the tension and the attack is becoming too much for him. You can do well to read detail of that in the paper. Agrip ENI purchase democracy in Nigeria now government of Tinubu by Tinubu for Tinubu, coming from Atiku. Asks the federal government to explain Owando's accredited approval in Agrip and the ENI purchase. Jigawa flood disaster. Death toll rises to 33. Over 50,000 affected. This is just in Jigawa state. You can do well to read detail in the paper. After murdering monarch, bandits kidnap over 150 in Sokoto community. And that's all on First News newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the big story, Osimhen demands £500,000 weekly to join Chelsea. Trabzonspor accelerates Onocho's transfer issue. Details can be found on page 6. Moses Simon scores first goal in 287 days. Tickets sold out ahead of Joshua Du Bois fight. Lukaku seals permanent exit from Chelsea. And we have Haaland matches Rooney's record. You can find details on page 2. I believe a record of hat-tricks. And we have Maduekwe's hat-trick hands Maresca's first Premier League win. Napoli agrees deal with Man United for McTominay. Late winner Messi's Ekong Saudi Arabia debut. Details can be found on page 6. Mourinho completes Arsenal medical. Al Hilal seek to trash out Cancelo terms with Man City. Abraham available for West Ham in €25 million deal. Details can be found on page 5. And we have Fulham boss praises Nwobi's date finished against Leicester. We have Osai Samuel rejects Fibonacci's €1.8 million annual salary. Details can be found on page 6. Jackson tells Obi Mikel, shut your mouth. Senior sacks trainer physio over doping row. Details can be found at the back page. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
All right, we have just a story on Business Day newspaper, which says federal government $1 million oil surveillance contract duplication raises questions. This is the story you need to read on page 3 of the paper. And that's all on Business Day newspaper, as well as how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Thank you to our viewers, supporters, and everyone who made the program a success. Till we come again tomorrow, do have a wonderful day ahead.